Welcome to another episode of Tools, Talents, and Techniques. I'm your host, Dustin Sutton, and today I am proud to bring to you Mr. Ross Marshall. He is executive at Bioversity, and I'm not going to do all the explaining about who he is and what he does. I'll let the conversation do that. So without any further ado, here he is, Mr. Ross Marshall. How are you?
I'm well, Dustin. Thank you very much for having me today. It's great to be here with you.
So before we jump in, could you just briefly say who you are and a little bit about Bioversity and what you do?
Yeah, gladly. I head up community engagement for Bioversity, but I think of myself as head of community engagement for the biotech industry. We're here in Boston, Cambridge area is kind of the epicenter of that industry in the world. And it's been a really great place to sort of see how the industry has grown, especially in the recent years here, but seeing how it wants to, what directions it wants to take in the future. And I think one of the things that we could talk about today is touching upon how we can take certain initiatives and models and put them in place to really see equity and diversity in this industry.
So there's a lot I want to talk about there, especially with biotech and life science. And me coming from most of this on the commercial real estate side, I see how that is growing and the property values are going up and the lease rates and all those things. And I want to talk about a lot of those. But before we do, can you talk a little bit about your origin story, like where how you got into this? Like where'd you start out?
Yeah. Excuse me. I actually started out in the energy sector. I was a geology major and chemistry, and I sort of followed that pathway for a number of years, and then had the opportunity to transition into the entertainment industry. And I was out in LA, and I worked on 70 different projects out there as a production manager. And it was really in that role where I got to see that even on Black movies, there really wasn't a whole lot of diversity behind the camera. So when I started becoming a production manager and sort of had that opportunity to start hiring people, I always try to dig deep into my network and make sure that people of color got that opportunity to get on set, build up their networks, get that experience, and move on with their careers. So I actually ended up in at KPMG working with them and their sort of change management style there, and it really gave me the opportunity to formalize a lot of these initiatives and models I had worked with. Because a movie or a TV show is a very short period of time, like 3 to 6 months, and you're on to the next project. So working with these, organizations that are institutes, they're not going to be here. They're going to be here in perpetuity. Your strategy is a little bit different. It has to be a little bit more formalized. And that really taught me a lot. It also taught me, yeah.
When you were when you were in the high school, college, was the goal to be in the energy sector, or was how did you make that pivot from this is what I'm doing to the entertainment?
Oh yeah, well I wanted to be an astronaut.
Oh, okay.
At that time, I think somebody told me or I read somewhere that most astronauts started out as a geologist. So that's kind of how I sort of went for that. I think that Colin Powell was a geologist, and the first Black mayor of New York City, Dinkins, he was a geology major. So these were kind of people that my white mother saw and was like, Ross, you should model some of these, very successful Black men. So I think it was a couple of things that sort of drove me to the life sciences.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? And I think when you're looking at career choices and what you want to do and you grew up in, I know for me and many people that I talk to, it's very rare that there's oh, that's exactly what I want to do or that's where I want to go. But in your path of travel, you can say, oh, I like this thing about the way that person is or what they do. I'm interested in that. And so that's really interesting to me to hear you say how you're navigating these career choices and these life choices based on influences.
Yeah, well, my mother also, I don't think she would have paid for art school. She was like, you have to be very intentional about what you like. She thought if you majored in science, math, econ, like that, that is something that you can get a job in and be very successful in. Political science, maybe not so much. Art, definitely not. So, I had to justify me going to college, and that was part of the process as well.
And how long were you at KPMG?
I was there about 4 years.
Okay. Did you like that role? What were you doing there?
It taught me a lot. It taught me that a lot of big organizations it's easier for them to say no and nothing to change because they know the outcomes that they're going to get and they can manage that. But when you start talking about changing some systems there, and change is not necessarily clean, it can be messy at times, there's more pushback about saying yes to these kind of changes here, even though ultimately it could possibly be better for the organization. And I found that very, very frustrating. And I also started being recognizing that they were using data, big data from organizations that are generating to make these kind of like business decisions. And I saw that we could take that lens and turn that as like a lens of diversity around the organization. So we could actually start tracking some of these results. And then they were like, that was even more pushback. So it came to a point where it was time to go.
Yeah, and so in your experience, like when did you? Because you alluded to it a couple times, like one for here, and then also in the production portion of your career, that you noticed diversity was a challenge. But when did it really start to turn into your focus and what you were trying to change and implement?
Definitely by the time I had come to KPMG, that was the main focus.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I sold myself and sort of how I was able to transition from the entertainment industry into this advisory role. And they seemed to be very, very open to that. Maybe they read a Harvard Business School article that's saying that change management and diversity and, whatever we were calling it at that time was the hot thing at the moment. But, it definitely wasn't in our ethos.
Yeah. So from these steps that you realized, what were the, because again, this show is tools, talents, and techniques. Was there anything in your personality or your skill set that really you started to hone in on craft and started to work and be able to affect change and progress in your career?
I was able to take some of these lessons I had learned at KPMG and really start applying to my own kind of practice, which was working with organizations in their HR data to try to see like a really clear pathway forward that was data supported, so the organization could justify these kind of new tactics, and that was very, very rewarding. But I think that coming up to Boston through MassBio was definitely a big change, probably the
All
biggest
right.
change in my career.
So let's talk about that. What was the transition like from, and how did you get there? What was the pathway into getting that opportunity?
She was president at the time, but Kendall Berlin O'Connell, the CEO and president now of MassBio, we started talking 3 years ago, July, and we had about 8 conversations, and she's very, very persuasive. And by the end of the 8th conversation, I pretty much had decided that I was going to leave my own practice. So I started with a couple of buddies, leave New York and come up to Boston and just work exclusively for MassBio and the biotech industry. And it was kind of intimidating to make this kind of move, but I'm glad I really, really did and listened and was open to the experience because it has really been a great move, a great transition for me.
What were the biggest obstacles or challenges you faced with this new start?
Well, I think it was it's a new industry I had not been in, and it's a kind of a newer, smaller kind of industry. So it was like about what were the real dynamics happening, because MassBio had 1,600 companies that belong. Like they could be startups or they could be, global organizations there. So the whole range is right there for you. Plus, just the fact of trying to move my family from, New Jersey up to Boston, and those kind of dynamics played in it as well.
Well, number one, what sports teams do you follow? Because I'd imagine that would be a part of the part of the challenge. You're moving to these different cities.
Yeah.
There's a lot of everything, every place that you've said so far. The fan bases are unique, but they all are similar in that they have a big and rabid fan.
Well,
Following.
it does me no good here, man. It does me no justice. I try to embrace the local teams wherever I'm at, but I was a Steelers fan growing up, so Tom Brady was a real pain for us for a long time, real pain point for us. I grew up loving the Lakers. Celtics are doing really well. I'm glad for them. That's great. So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah. And so how long have you been in Massachusetts now?
It's 3 years this month.
Okay, 3 years. Okay. Um, so some of the things when you're going into the trip, what were you initially tasked with? What was the onboarding? This is what we want you to do.
Yes, it was pretty much a traditional diversity role in the sense that I was creating an advisory practice to help their membership with our diversity initiatives, be it a diversity statement, hiring practices, whatever the gamut. We were there to assist them.
Was there anything that you found particularly useful in developing these things, and some things that landed, some things that didn't? Anything that really stands out and is like, wow, this really moved the needle on this?
I was surprised how many different organizations were trying to do something. Like, it was like the whole range was right there. Um, but I guess what I was most curious about, especially initially, was working with what's that, Third Rock, and they have a bunch of portfolio, like 50 portfolio companies there, and they're always looking to invest in new upstarts and founders there. And they were looking for a way to standardize take an analysis of an organization that was just basically a startup and sort of do like an equity assessment of them. So instead of always just thinking about the return and the investment there, just add one more lens there of diversity and how that would play out there. And how would that look? Like, so when you start forming your board of your startup there, I mean, the easy way to go with that is to look around your immediate circle, especially when you're coming out of academia into, this VC world here. But if you take the extra time there, you could bring other expertise into that role that's going to help you over long term. And you may have to expand that search, but if you take the time to really be open to it, you can add more diversity to that.
And so you mentioned like you were surprised at seeing how many different people were involved in doing things. Was there a common theme that, like in my experience, especially working with the BCREN, and you see all these different organizations that are doing something similar, but everyone's going towards the same way, same direction, it seems sometimes. but
That's
everybody has like similar goals. And I just imagine from your perspective, like how challenging it must be to standardize, to get everybody on the same page and do things.
It is. You have to take it by the size of an organization there to really try to get some real like apples to apples.
Mhm.
Otherwise it just is all over the place, and you really can't make sense of what you're looking at there. Yeah.
So biomass and bioversity. Could you just elaborate, more on in depth on what they are and how they?
Yeah, sure. So MassBio is the oldest and largest trade organization in the biotech industry. So one of the roles that they play is they take an industry pulse, and they know that there's going to be a tremendous amount of growth in the biotech industry, like 30,000 new jobs over the next 5 years being created here. And we also know that diversity, after 30 years of initiatives, millions of dollars spent, are still in the single digits. And I think this is the most exciting thing about how my role has transitioned from doing an advisory, traditional DI practice, to something that's actually putting numbers up there. We've been able to create a workforce initiative where we are able to take somebody with a high school diploma, a strong desire for a career, and give them the skills in 8 weeks to have a career job in the biotech industry and lab operations. You know,
8 weeks. Wow,
eight
that's
weeks.
impressive.
It is pretty impressive. It was extremely rewarding when one of our students from our first cohort got a job over at Vertex. He called me, asked me about stock options.
That's great.
It is great. And I think this is something that could work in a variety of different industries. And I think that's actually what brought us today, is that I'm having these conversations in the biotech industry. You're having these conversations in the real estate industry. And I think the conversations are very, very similar.
Yeah.
And I think these kind of workforce initiatives that are work as sort of like as an engine can really be powerful in our perspective of industries. And when I say engine, I mean that being with MassBio, and we have like 1,600 companies that belong, we're able to reach out to them and say, hey, you need people in lab operations. Like you can't go to college for lab operations. They're hiring people that have low retention rates. Like, hey, we have the talent here. They have this baseline skills. They have great interpersonal skills here. They know what the jobs are. They're prepared for that. Check it out. And it's actually beginning to work. So now industry is actually looking at Bioversity as their first stop when they're looking to hire for lab operations.
That's fantastic. And I talk often about transferable skills and how people get opportunities, but when people are always fishing out of the same pond and they're like, we were looking for talent from this school with this background, with this, there's something missing. Like, and I know that, and I'd love to talk to you more about this. There's been a recent pushback on DEI efforts. However, the diversity of thought and creativity from bringing people with different backgrounds and different thought processes, it oftentimes, more than not, leads to discovery. It leads to new iterations on things. So the see you having that success there is amazing, and I love to hear it. And I'd also like to say, one of the things that I really love about having this podcast and having these conversations is we do get to bridge this communication, right? Like I get to learn about the different things that you're doing and how you're doing and what you're having success in, and there may be somebody who's listening to this who's in insurance or finance. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I want to hear more because I'm dealing with those same challenges. So yeah, again, thank you for sharing this. I want to real quick. Did I say biomass before instead of mass bio?
Maybe.
Well, if I
Maybe.
did, I apologize because yeah, it sounds totally different when you switch that around. So what's on your plate right now? Like, what are you doing right now? That's the biggest thing that you getting the most joy out of, the most excitement. What are you excited for with what you're doing right now?
I've been in the industry for about 3 years, and I've had opportunity to talk to a lot of Black and Brown people in the business. And I would say that there's a common theme when you talk to people in the industry, and that is they found out about it because somebody at their dinner table was already in the industry. And I think that we just opened our doors in January, but by the time we're done this year, we're going to have about 75 people sitting down at dinner tables, having that kind of impact. And I think that's what I think about the most. How can we get more people at their dinner tables talking about the opportunities to share in the wealth being generated in the biotech industry?
I just really feel that when I see the numbers that are going in biotech and life science in general, it's staggering. It is absolutely staggering. What's being developed here in San Diego, what's already established in Massachusetts. I mean, this is old news for old hat for you guys. And but in San Francisco and everything's happening in San Diego right now, it is just remarkable the quality of the facilities that are being done, the advances in technology and science, and now with AI accelerating those things. This is going to be a huge transition here. And you're right. Like how can we get more people involved?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of opportunity happening right now. And, in Massachusetts, the average salary is $180,000. And it wouldn't take somebody long to reach that mark in a lab operations role with a high school diploma. You're talking about like 3 to 5 years, 7 years. You should be a manager, director, well along your career pathway there, and hopefully buying property, maxing out your 401k, taking advantage of all these, opportunities and how to build intergenerational wealth, because this is what it's all about.
When you guys when your organization or the people that you're working with are looking for qualities in somebody who might be a good fit for this, like who are they? Are there any um, specific things that jump out and say, like, if you are X and you can do Y, you should
You
come
know,
on board?
it's you want to say, when you see it. You meet that person, you're like, this person has got it. They just need the door open for them. And it's hard to standardize that search there. So our process is pretty easy. We have 5 cohorts a year, so we have rolling admissions. Because timing is really everything. If this is the right fit for you, it's about making sure that the timing works out just right for you. So we try to make sure everybody has like a sort of level set of math skills and language skills and computer skills. And then it's a slight assessment, a personality assessment there. It takes about 10 minutes to complete the whole application process there. Um, Assuming that you score well on that, you do an in-person interview. And if that goes well, we bring you in for an in-person interview to see the South Line, which is the old Boston Globe building. This is where we're situated, in Dorchester, which is a historically black neighborhood. And it's a great tech hub. We have like the pool tables and the video games and all that kind of fun stuff in the common areas that you think about when you think about a Google or a place like that. When my students come in there, I want them to see themselves in these kind of spaces, and like not be like the first day like overwhelmed, like take ownership of all that stuff there.
Also, what's the age range for where you're looking for folks to join the cohorts? What's that look like?
When we first designed this, we really thought that it would be recent high school graduates that would take this. What we're really finding is our average age is like 29 and a half. You find me somebody that's had a couple jobs, been knocked around a little bit, they understand what a career is. They are the ones that are willing to be like, yeah, I will do this. Not because I necessarily love science, because I want a career that I'm proud of.
And so are you only focused in the Massachusetts area? Is this something that you have initiatives that you're going elsewhere as well, or is this?
Well, we
Oh,
do have a good, I guess also better answer your last question there.
okay.
So, we've had students as young as 19 and as old as 57 go through the program.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. But the average age is like 29 and a half.
Okay.
We are not, well, we really are not too specific about where somebody lives, though. But we are an 8-week program. We meet Monday through Thursday, 9 to 3. We are all in person. So living too far away could be a hindrance to
Mhm.
coming in and leaning into the experience. So to that, we're in Dorchester. We are doing another location in Lowell, Mass, in partnership with UMass uh, University Systems. Um, and we're just going to follow the demographics now. We want this to be a pathway for people who historically been not able to take advantage of all this. Mainly basically black and brown people. We're in Dorchester, and Boston has traditionally been like Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan have been the black neighborhoods. But through gentrification, yada yada yada, black people, brown people are moving out to other areas. So even though we're in Dorchester, you don't see too many black people there in Dorchester anymore. That
Mhm.
that demographic has changed a lot in the last few years. So if we want to connect with these people, we have to see whether we got to follow the numbers. So going out to Lowell is a good place for us. Brockton could be a good area for us. So it would serve us better to smaller regional areas as opposed to one big training facility.
Have you heard of any other organizations like yours that are in other markets, like say San Francisco or the Bay Area or like Baltimore? Is there anybody that's doing something similar?
There are other workforce initiatives in biotech, the semiconductor industry that I'm somewhat familiar with there. I don't know of any of them that have been able to try to create the engine where you're like recruiting, training, and placing at scale. I have
Hmm.
not seen that in pretty much any industry yet. And I think we're building up to that right now.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to put the cart in front of the horse, or maybe I am. It's like this sounds like something that could be very impactful in all of these areas that have a similar or same need, which
Yes.
is the Bay Area, which is San
Yep.
Diego, which is Baltimore. Yeah, this is this that's.
a lot of industries are really, really hard up for workers. And do they
Mhm.
all need these qualifications of a 4-year degree? Do they need these qualifications of a master's? What do they really need to be successful in that role? And then how can we train them up to that? And then how can we also impact the culture of the organization to be accepting of somebody that has an 8-week certificate and you have a PhD and you're working side by side with them?
Yeah.
A lot of
And you
moving
know,
parts.
a lot of moving parts. It's funny like, to hear you explain it and do this. It's like, oh yeah, it's easy. Like you can do, but then you start to layer on like what all those things are and how they actually the dynamics at work. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. But I think the things that you said, like you know it when you see it, and you introduce this, you have exposure, and you show people that this is something that can be done, and then you have a vetting process, and then if additional education is needed or additional resources are needed, you find that out
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
get them and you get them like, oh, this person could do this, but they would just need this and that, and then at least now you know.
yeah. And we've also been able to get a big investment from the city and the state and industry there. So, all our students are tuition free. They all get a $500 a week stipend, and we try to support them the best way. We try to support them with their first job, their next job, the job after that. As they progress along in their career path.
Yeah. And so as far so that you're 3 years in with this initiative, what are the biggest things that you're looking forward to in the next couple of years? Is there anything that you can share, or it's not,
Oh,
confidential?
well, no, I think what I'm looking forward to most seeing is how our graduates who have gone on to pursue a career will come back and reach out and pull the next class up.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time out all over Boston, meeting with people, talking about Bioversity, talking about the biotech industry there. And we've had a tremendous amount of outpouring and interest in the program. And I ask everybody, like, how did you hear about Bioversity? Like my mom, my auntie. So it's that trust. It's that community kind of trust that's going to bring somebody in there. So it's about somebody has to hear from somebody that they trust.
Yeah.
And there's no better salesperson for this than somebody who went through the program and has a job and is making a career out of it. That's the best. That's the best advertising I have right there.
Yeah. So as far as initiatives and other companies that you're working with or that have been a huge proponent for what you're doing or sponsor, like is there anybody that stands out on like, hey, we're doing it because of these people are really helping out? Is there anybody that you can
Yeah,
share?
there's been a lot of partners, and I think it's been a unique opportunity for organizations to actually be affirmative about and intentional about volunteering.
Hmm.
And that's a resource and a benefit that a lot of organizations offer their employees, but they don't necessarily know how to necessarily take advantage of volunteer opportunities here. This has provided a lot of organizations a chance to come in, share their story, share their secrets of success, do lab practicals with the students, really get to meet them. We do an HR panel where you can ask the HR professional any question you want. They can do mock interviews, so you really tighten up those interview skills. We do a career fair in the 7th week, where it's a real great opportunity to get a head start on applying to these opportunities there. Um, so, and then we do tours of some of these other facilities there. They open up the doors, and you meet other lab operations people doing it in the real world. They show you what their life is like. So it's just been just a really great way for the industry to come together and be positive about it and get to know the program and get to know our students there. And I think that's going to help everybody in the long run.
Yeah. So I'm going to share more information about you and your organization in the show notes for this episode. But is there anything else you want to leave our listeners with about you know how to contact you, when to contact you, what you're looking for? Like the stage is yours.
Well, I have no boundaries, so I'm a workaholic. So please reach out to me. Please share my email address. I hope that somebody will hear this and think about how they can use it for their own needs and their own efforts there. And I'm very good about connecting with purpose-driven people. I think it's been a real key to my success. I think that's the reason why we've connected, Dustin, and that's the reason why we're here today. So hopefully somebody out there is going to be like, what I could do it this way. I need to reach out to Ross because X, Y, and Z. So don't just reach out.
Yeah, well, I'm very impressed with what you built so far. So I'm excited. And there's any way again that I can be of service or be able to help you and help our listeners and help the people in your organization, I'm happy to do so. Thank you for your good work.
Man, you're gonna have to come out here to Boston, man. At the South End, we got a whole podcast studio waiting for you. We can do it live from the South Line.
I like it. I love it.
We'll get Judy on here too. We'll kill
it. Yeah, shout out to Judy. That's right. Oh, that's great. All right, Ross. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Dustin. Bye-bye.